Good afternoon to everyone. As you can see, the title of this presentation includes a very powerful word, communication. It's not the purpose of this presentation to analyze in detail this powerful word, but we will see some tools to better manage communication in project, and why not, even in our life. Let's see our journey. We will go through a brief literature review about stakeholders. Then I will introduce a tool to better map and manage communication with stakeholders. And then a brief look to communication aspect and a tool that can be easily used to deal with stakeholders communication. Let's start to see how stakeholders are usually classified and represented. Stakeholders classification is a very complex topic, and it is fundamental that the project manager could classify them. For PMI, a stakeholder is an individual, group, or organization who may affect, be affected by, or perceive itself to be affected by a decision, activity, or outcome of a project. And this is a very extensive definition. So in literature, many authors have tried to suggest how to classify the stakeholders in order to effectively engage them in clusters, from internal to external classification to any others such as a regulator, controller, partner, passive, dependent stakeholder, and so on. And maybe surprisingly, stakeholders classification is not confined only to human beings. There are also non-social classifications, such as fauna, flora, and environment. So, as we can see, there are many ways in literature to identify and classify stakeholders, but always with the aim to define which of them and to what extent should be included in strategic issues, as they will not always have equal interest in certain topics or problems. As there are a lot of ways to map stakeholders, from classical interest power grid, interest influence grid, or active inactive and supportive non-supportive map. And this mapping is not always clear, as we can see, especially when we have to map a high number of stakeholders. All these literature examples are undoubtedly useful, but they are not specific for deal with communication aspect, and of course with stakeholders input. With the aim of a better focus on stakeholders communication and engagement, in 2012 a tool was presented called the Stakeholder Shape Tool. Basically, the idea is that when dealing with the communication aspects, attributes like power, legitimacy, proximity, urgency should not be so prominent. In the stakeholder shape methodology, it is suggested that the project manager must concentrate her efforts trying to answer a simple question. How can I engage and manage correctly the stakeholders? To answer this question, the Stakeholder Shape tool proposes to investigate only three attributes that are relationship, what stakeholder thinks of the project manager, agreement, by what means stakeholders agree with the project and project objectives, and risk leverage, the degree at which the stakeholder might influence or control the transition of the risk from possible to happened. Relationship. The specific stakeholder doesn't trust or esteem the project manager, or the specific stakeholders trust and or esteem the project manager. Agreement. The specific stakeholder does not share the project, and with different intensity, he or she will attempt to block the project or to delay the project objectives, or the specific stakeholder believes in the project and supports it. Risk leverage, that is the degree at which the stakeholder might influence or control the transitions of the risks of the project from possible to happened. For example, type of risk, unavailability of resources of the department. Of course, the head of the department, who is a stakeholder in this particular risk, has a high risk leverage, near 100%. And this is the graph to be used in the model. On y-axis, it is traced the value of the risk leverage under the form of a segment. Then there are two values on x-axis. The lower point represents the relationship value, and the higher point represents the agreement value. The three areas represented, do something, keep informed, do nothing, are relative to the management of communication and engagement of the stakeholders. And this is a typical final representation, the stakeholder shape map, with which you can better manage communication engagement with each stakeholder in your project. And now let's give a look to communication. I don't want to bore you with an essay on communication. No way. Communication is a complex topic. What I want to underline during this session is that it's all about communication. This is a key point. At the end, what is a human being? Information. I am information. Why? Because I'm what my DNA is, and DNA is information. What do we send in the deep space trying to communicate something? DNA scheme. And information is a part of the communication process. It's a linear communication approach. And communication approach may be linear, very similar to an information indeed, just one sender, one receiver, sometimes some noises between linear communication approach, or communication approach may be interactive, more complex and complicated. Interactive communication is an exchange of ideas where both participants, whether human, machine, or art form, are active and can have an effect on one another. It is a dynamic to flow of information. Okay, I understand, again, not so simple and immediate, but think about radio and television. They are, or better, they were a linear communication approach until the rise of internet connectivity. Now, with these new technologies, also television is a sort of interactive communication approach. Everyone can send a feedback or interact with the television. And communication is so important, the project, it is so full of communication, that the project manager can be loaded up to 19% from the aspect of communication. And we must know this to manage this as better. Linear and interactive communication approach as well. Both of them must be controlled by a project manager. So we have two key points. It's all about communication, and both linear and interactive communication must be properly managed. And to better manage communication, a new paradigm of the well-known rhetorical triangle is given. Communication is a matter of passion. The project manager must communicate the passion for the project, the vision and the benefits, the what. Also, communication is a matter of logos. The project manager must know how to communicate, through which channel and with which frequency to elude unnecessary communication or communication overload. The how. In addition, communication is a matter of ethics. Communication must be transparent and clear and democratic, and this means know why we are communicating, the why. Put your stakeholder inside the triangle and solve the three why, what, and how, and you will have a clear communication approach for each stakeholder. It is a very easy to use tool that in a PM 2.0 world helps the project manager to find the right communication approach for each stakeholder. And this is true also for your personal life. Solving the triangle for each stakeholder would address the project manager toward a successful communication plan. And solving the triangle for your mother, your father, your husband, your wife, your children, or your boss will give you a more clear vision of communication aspect in your life. Here we are, just a few minutes to summarize our short journey. Especially in contexts that are becoming on time and on demand, The response of the project manager must be timely and therefore requires a suite of tools that, with limited data, the attributes of stakeholders can be updated quickly in order to constantly identify with whom, how, what, and overall why communicate. In addition, corporate social responsibility increases through ethical communication approach, and in the PM 2.0 framework, it's more and more important to clearly discover the strategic needs of communication, the why, the ethos we are communicating something to each specific stakeholder. The use of stakeholders shape tool combined with the variation in the communication triangle will drive the project manager to the right strategic approach in order to build a successful communication plan. How they say? That's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Then I'm at your disposal for your question. Thank you very much.